That was a hell of a trip through the portal. Fucking man, Indiana is rough. This house is a mess. I hope the dogs are put away. I think the dogs are kenneled good. Man, look at this wall of Funko Pops. Man, this is wild. I'm in Eric's house. This is crazy. All right, where the hell is he? Not in this room. What's in here? Ah, okay. There he is. All right. Eric. Hey, Eric.
What? Oh, what the fuck? What? Keith, is that you, man?
I mean, yeah, or, that could be a Blizzard CEO.
Keith, man, we, you went on hiatus and no one's heard from you. Like, we thought you, died, man. Is everything good? Are you okay? Why isn't, my wife and my dogs are gone. What's going on here?
Well, I mean, Eric, technically, I guess you could say I have died, modern gaming industry. We're all a little bit dead inside, aren't we?
I mean, yeah, given the current state of the gaming landscape, was that what you hear about here to talk video games at my house at 3 in the morning?
Well, Eric, see, you're actually on another plane of existence.
Oh. So I'm dead. That's what you're telling me.
Well, as dead as you can be.
No, yeah, you do raise a pretty good point there. I have been feeling pretty dead inside the last few years, just with everything that's been going on.
Well, hey, don't you worry your pretty little redhead, my man, because you've got work to do.
What are you talking about? Also, why are you dressed up like a Reaper?
Dressed up like a Reaper? This is how I dress every day. I've traveled time and space, Eric, playing some of the worst video games ever imagined. I'm on the clock. I have a new job now.
So what? You just travel around killing video games now? Is that your sole purpose in life?
Well, yeah, you could say I am the killer of childhood dreams, childhood memories. You could call me the Nostalgia Reaper if you like. I just like to call myself a podcaster. It's true, Eric. I've been traveling the deepest, darkest depths of everybody's memories. I'm in yours right now. Like I said, we are on a different plane of existence. Your husk of a body is back in another part of Indiana that I don't even want to see.
I always knew this day would come eventually, but with a combination of growing older plus deciding to be a podcaster myself, I've just been feeling more and more dead inside with every day that goes along. All right, I guess I have to go along with this since I don't really have anywhere else to go. So what am I doing here? What do I got to do? What's the catch?
Well, it's quite simple, Eric. You see, you're going to have to go and relive all of those games that you grew up with, but under a modern light.
Keith, that sounds terrible. Everybody knows that old video games are bad. Why that doesn't sound like an afterlife reward. That sounds more like a punishment. Like hell, why would you make me replay all these old games?
It's true, old games are bad. Not every game can be Danganronpa. Not every game can be Flappy Bird, Eric. I'm sorry. Eric, not every game is Words with Friends. But you'll soon find out that some of the games that you grew up with are indeed shit. For example, I just spent 5 hours watching this guy replay Sonic 2. And he hated every moment. And you think this job pays well? I didn't enjoy doing it. Not at all. But when it comes time, when you are feeling just so good about yourself, about the games that you played as a child, that's where I come in. And I can't help but notice you're next on my list here. And then I got this other guy who thinks Pokemon Snap is really good right after you. So we really need to get you rolling here, honestly. And
oh no.
This first game on the list, Super Mario World.
I mean, Keith, you can't do this to me, man. I come on. What about all the good times we had when we were alive? Super Mario World. That's the first game I ever played. You can't take that from me. You can't do that, man.
Eric, was I ever alive?
No, I mean, you've got a point there. Are any of us really alive when we're all dead inside with Breath of the Wild 2 on the horizon?
No, that's the other Reaper. That's the hype Reaper. I don't do that job. I don't delay the games. I'm sorry. That's not me. That's the other guy.
All right. Well, I don't want to keep you off your schedule here. So just tell me what do I got to do? Where do I got to go?
Well, let me open this closet here. Oh, Jesus, you got the skeletons in your closet, sir. That's not our problem right now. There's a pipe that's looking like a nice Mario pipe right there. You just go right down in there. I gotta get to this Pokemon Snap thing, so if you can just, don't even worry about it. Just stop twiddling your thumb. At least put some pants on. Can you put some pants on before you go? I can't believe you sleep naked like this.
All right. Yeah. No. Yeah. I'll here. Let me put my pants on. And Keith, listen. If I'm being judged by past actions in regards to the skeletons in the closet, I did try to help that girl at E3. I really did. But she just went down and I couldn't get to her.
Listen, we'll talk about Mario Odyssey when we come to that. All right.
All right. So just get in this pipe here, right here. Just swing one leg over and just down I go.
Yeah, it'll be fine. There's totally an end to this pit. Just take my word for it.
You never led me wrong before, so I guess here it goes. I guess I'll see you on the other side then?
Yeah, I'll be around, probably. Sure.
Guess I'll see you when I see you then. Whoa! Holy crap, man. I'm really glad that whatever I landed on is soft or that I'm dead, because that fall from the sky to the ground would definitely have killed me. Where am I? There's a lot blue skies, clouds, a lot of hills with faces in the backgrounds. I mean, last thing I remember is Keith told me to go down the pipe, and where did he say I'd be going? Everything also looks so bright and colorful and pixelated here. Maybe that thing over there can help me. Excuse me, sir. Sir, can I ask you for some help, please? I seem to have fallen from the sky and I don't know where I am. Oh, you're a dinosaur. No, I wasn't being offensive. I guess I didn't notice from a distance. That's shocking. Okay, so, where am I exactly? Can you tell me where I am? Because I can kind of weirdly understand you, I guess.
Yahoo! Wow!
Dinosaur Land. Of course, that makes sense because you're a dinosaur. Of course it would. So, well, is there anybody else here? Is there people? Is there somebody like human I can talk to? I really need to find my way out of here. I'm on this journey. I need to go to the next place. So if you could kindly just point me to somebody that could help me out. That guy over there, just running around jumping on stuff. That guy.
Yahoo!
He's doing what now? Saving the princess. And all of your friends? They were trapped in eggs by an evil Koopa? And his kids?
Yahoo!
What the heck is going on here, man? Okay, well, I mean, I guess I've got no other leads, so yeah, let's follow that guy. Let's go see about your friends and see about this princess. Let's go.
Yohi! Yohi!
What's your name?
Yohi!
Of course, that's the only thing you can say. Nice to meet you, Yoshi. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another exciting episode of the Unlockables podcast, the story of video games, the people who play them, and the memories made along the way. As always, my name is Eric. I will be your host, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in, whether it's your first time or whether you're a returning listener. Wherever, whenever in time and space you might be located, it means a lot to me that you spend just a little bit of time each and every week here listening to the show. I really do appreciate it. Now, for today's episode, as I'm sure you're probably all wondering, based on the interesting sketch intro that I had the pleasure of recording with my good friend Keith from the Main Quest podcast. I'm starting a new series on the show here. Don't worry, there are still things in the pipeline that are coming. Kingdom Hearts Guiding Keys, the story of Kingdom Hearts is still due to come out sometime near the end of July. I'm still working on that. And guest episodes hopefully will be returning next week. I have some lined up. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk about something else. This is a video game podcast. And as my tagline for the podcast, as I say every single episode, is the story of video games, the people who play them, and the memories made along the way. So I thought a good idea for an episode or a series of episodes would be to take a bit of a stroll down memory lane and talk about the games that influenced me the most in my life. And I thought this was really interesting. I'm already doing a whole deep dive series on probably one of the most important games in my life, Kingdom Hearts. But I wanted to do smaller one-off episodes on the other games that were very, very important to me. And so I decided to start replaying some of them and going back throughout the years and just playing them, seeing if they hold up today, and just kind of my feelings around them and my memories about them from when I was growing up or what time in my life I was playing them. I decided to kind of frame it as this grand adventure, which is why I had Keith involved in this skit at the start where he is the nostalgia reaper, and I thought it was kind of a clever shtick, and he's sending me off on an adventure to quote unquote kill my nostalgia and prove to me that old games are bad and will never be good. But I'm hoping throughout the course of my journey I will find and rediscover that the memories connected to these games are really what make them great, and regardless of how good a game is, how bad it is, what you might think about it. The memories associated with any game are what make them good. For you personally, video games, it is difficult to be subjective. There are things which we can all agree upon that make games good or bad, but a lot of it has to do with emotion. And when you have things that are tied to emotion, people aren't really rational when it comes to that, right? Someone's favorite game might be somebody else's least favorite game, or a game that is objectively critically bad somebody might love because it meant a lot to them at that point in time in their life. I keep going back to the example of Kingdom Hearts, and I realize that game, while not perfect and has a lot of storytelling and issues like that, it's still an immensely important game to me personally because of this. I have such strong emotions attached to Kingdom Hearts. I played those games at times in my life when I really needed them, when I really needed something like that. So I'll always have very strong emotions and memories associated with those games. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, what game are you going to talk about first? And if you are any fan of the show or listen to it, or perhaps if you haven't, I figured it was best to go all the way back to the very, very beginning, to some of my earliest childhood memories, some of my earliest formative memories that I can remember clearly in my head. And like I said, if you've listened to the show, you know that this game is, of course, Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. Just to give you a little bit of background information on Super Mario World if you're not super well versed in it. Super Mario not only is an important game for me in my life at the time, but at the time it launched, it was a critically important game for Nintendo. Super Mario World was released on November 21st, 1990 in Japan and August 23rd, 1991 in America. It was developed by Nintendo EAD, their legendary research and development team, headed by, of course, Shigeru Miyamoto. And it was a launch packing title for the Super Nintendo / Super Famicom, which led it to sell over 20 million units over the course of its lifetime. Of course, it was re-released later on the Game Boy Advance and is currently on the Switch, the Super Nintendo Online thing that you get with, I don't know what the NSO, Nintendo Switch Online, right? You get the virtual console and all the games that they offer that you can play with it. Of course, Super Mario is going to be one of them. Like I said, it was helmed by series creator Shigeru Miyamoto, and it was directed by Takashi Tezuka, who at this point in Nintendo had worked on a ton of games, for example, A Link to the Past, and he in the future worked on Mario 64. He always also worked on Super Mario Bros. 3. And speaking of Super Mario Bros. 3, it's kind of hard to tell the history of Super Mario World without talking about 3 and without talking about the history of the Super Nintendo as well. They're all kind of inextricably linked with each other. You might find it hard to believe that Super Mario Bros. 3 came out in 1990 in the United States when the Super Nintendo was already out on the market. Of course, Mario Bros. 3 being for the NES, the console that preceded it. And this is all kind of interesting because this is coming at a time in video games when people weren't getting the same things across the world at all times. Stuff was coming out in Japan first, and there was a lengthy delay for it to get into the American market. You know, marketing was even different for the different consoles. For example, the Famicom was the Nintendo Entertainment System in the United States. I think it was, the PC Engine, which was in Japan, was the TurboGrafx 16. The Genesis, I believe, was called something. I believe the Genesis was called the Mega Drive, if I'm remembering my history correctly. Yeah, it was the Mega Drive. So the Mega Drive was released in the States as the Genesis. So, Eastern Japanese video game developers back then thought they had to kind of market these things differently to appeal to the Western audience. And that's where we get a lot of this confusing stuff like Famicom versus NES, Super Famicom versus Super NES, the Mega Drive versus the Genesis, PC Engine, TurboGrafx 16. It's kind of where you get some of that confusion and where you end up getting like the different numbered Final Fantasies, how they went from Final Fantasy 4 to Final Fantasy 7 because they didn't release 2 of them here in the United States or whatever. Or Final Fantasy 3. I don't know, something like that. The numbering convention was really stupid because some of those games just didn't come over here, and Japan just wanted to confuse the hell out of the Western market. But at the time that Super Mario World started being developed with this team headed by Miyamoto and Tezuka, and 16 other developers, I think 9 of whom had previously worked on Mario titles before, including legendary composer Koji Kondo, who arguably composed one of, if not the most recognizable video game jingle in existence, in the Super Mario Brothers theme. So this staff working on this game, a lot of who are now high up level Nintendo executives, really, really a legendary staff. I'm not here to talk about them specifically, but just to give you a bit of background on how Super Mario World came into existence. So in the late 80s, like your 88s, 89, 90, and early 90s, I suppose you could say, Nintendo pretty much had a monopoly on the console market for 8-bit machines, their NES being an 8-bit machine. And they controlled something like 80% of the market in the United States. And every year they were selling more and more and more Famicoms / NESs. It was the toy to have at this time in history. It was better than anything anyone had ever seen. It had beaten out all the old video game systems to become pretty much the de facto player in the video game market, and they had pretty much complete dominance. So it was because of this that, as the NES started to get older towards the end of the late 80s and early 90s, that Nintendo was really hesitant. The technology was there for what people were calling for 16-bit systems, and Nintendo was really hesitant to move on to a new 16-bit system because their NES was still selling like hotcakes. They were selling more year over year over year. And they were just getting ready to put a new Super Mario Brothers game out in Mario Bros. 3. And so they didn't want to put the resources into developing a 16-bit console. They were kind of forced to, though, because Sega and PC Engine came out with quote unquote 16-bit machines in the Mega Drive and the PC Engine, known in the United States as the Genesis and the TurboGrafx 16. At the time, this really hurt Nintendo. If you were talking about the video game market as a general, they still had a pretty good share, but the 16-bit market specifically, Sega pretty much got 3/4 of all that business out there compared to some of the other players. And Sega was actually jumped ahead of Nintendo. It was the first time that anybody had really been able to challenge Nintendo's dominance for several years. So, and they had Ace up their sleeve too. They had priced the Genesis pretty competitively at $150, and they had Sonic the Hedgehog, which was, marketed as a cooler, more modern, more edgy mascot than Mario, whereas Mario was really for everybody. Sonic was, if you wanted to say, hey, I'm hip, I'm cool, I'm in Sonic's camp. And this was the start of what has become known and has continued to be known today, even though it doesn't exist anymore, as the console wars. This is an intense period of competition between Nintendo and Sega specifically, where they really were on equal footing for a while. And it was an intense competition with a lot of money thrown around, marketing budgets in the the low nine figures for all of these. That's where you get some of your most legendary marketing campaigns. Now you're playing with power, superpower, and stuff like that. And it's just an incredible time for video games. So Nintendo has to respond. So they begin development on the Super Famicom, aka the Super Nintendo. And of course, they're going to put their strongest IP, Mario, as the flagship title. That's the way they have continued to sell NESs. It's been sold on the strength of Mario. He's at this point, consumer recognition was measured after the release of Super Mario Bros. 3. Mario was more recognizable in the United States than Mickey Mouse, which at the time was the most probably powerful, iconic cartoon character IP in the world at the time. So for Mario to be more recognizable than Mickey is incredible. So Nintendo obviously has brand recognition and the trust of the consumer in their back pocket. So of course they're going to lead off with Mario. So the 16-man team led by Miyamoto and Tezuka got to work, and you might think, just they got to throw it together. So not only were they working on Super Mario World at the same time as the Super Nintendo was like being developed and finalized, they had to learn all of the new design tools that came with the new hardware. Obviously, you have hardware that can do way more than what the NES could do. You have more sound channels. You have more colors that can be displayed on screen. You just have so much more that you can do, so much more detail that you can provide. So it really was a challenge for the team to not only create a next-gen Mario experience, unlike anything that had ever been seen, but to also learn these tools alongside developing this game. Koji Kondo specifically had a really difficult time because there was just so much more he could do with 3 extra audio channels and thousands of different instruments that can now be compatible with the Super Nintendo. And he was really concerned about, he obviously knew that his Super Mario Brothers theme was one of the most iconic pieces of music in the world at the time. So he was really concerned with following that up and had a lot of pressure on him to follow that up on a new system that was going to be competing essentially in a reset video game market. So in order to do this, one of the first things that the Mario team did was they basically, I don't know if it was like remade or ported in or however they did it, Super Mario Brothers 3 on the Super Nintendo hardware to kind of learn and see what that would look like. And really, the start of the design for World kind of sprung off of 3, whereas earlier builds and earlier designs of 3 or World were very similar to 3. So similar that a lot of early looks at the game, journalists and publicists were just like, this doesn't look any different. This isn't anything new. people were expecting a leap forward for Mario with Nintendo's new console. So they had to go back to the drawing board several times and kind of rework the design and kind of tweak it as they went along to offer something brand new that kind of felt like a leap forward for Mario, and not just they didn't want to make the mistakes that they did with Super Mario Bros. 2, which over here is called the Lost Levels, which is basically just put out another Mario game but harder. Which that's interesting because Miyamoto's whole design philosophy is basically centered around accessibility and fun. So for him to make a ball crushingly hard game is kind of funny. So they didn't want to have a situation like that where they were going from essentially Mario 3 to Mario 4 and make just something that looked like Super Mario Brothers 3. And this really was the challenge. One of the most important things and differentiating things that came from the development of Super Mario World was the introduction of a brand new character, Yoshi, the rideable dinosaur, and one of Nintendo's most iconic characters to this date was introduced in Super Mario World. And the history of Yoshi is kind of interesting because Miyamoto had always wanted Mario to have like a riding dinosaur companion when back to his first conceptual ideas of Super Mario Bros. But with the technical hardware limitations of the NES, this just wasn't possible. But Miyamoto held on to this idea. He had this idea of Mario riding something. He had sketches in his office of Mario riding a horse. So this idea was always there. They just didn't have the hardware to pull it off. But now they did. And now, since this game is set in a setting called Dinosaur Land, this is the perfect time to implement it. And this is one of the key elements of the game that really changes the way it's played. The new Super Nintendo hardware allowed them to show off a lot of different things too. They could do scrolling backgrounds. You could use the L and the R buttons to kind of scroll forward and scroll back to see like what was coming and what wasn't. The older Super Mario Bros. Games had a lot of like leaps of faith, and especially in the Lost Levels, where you just kind of had to jump and hope that something was there because you couldn't scroll the screen over. The Super Nintendo allowed them to do things like transparency with the water to make it more believable, and to do things like the disappearing boos and the ghosts that disappeared, or when you looked at them, they stopped moving. So just a lot of little things like that. And it really allowed them to make this game super colorful and super bright. I mean, I think the Super Nintendo could do like over 30,000 colors I saw. So it really allowed them to make things super bright and and really make what I consider to be the defining art style of the Super Nintendo. To this day, when I think of video games, I think of Super Nintendo and I think of Super Mario World, because I think that design is just so iconic. It also took advantage of the hardware through the world map too. And the world map was, in Super Mario Brothers 3, the world map was kind of straightforward. There were a little bit of some secrets here and there that you could do. You could break rocks with a hammer to move on, the warp whistle. There were minigame houses, but there were truly secrets hidden in the world map. And I think this is super clever the way they went about doing this, because one of the elements of Mario that Miyamoto always wanted there to be was for you to be able to express yourself and play the way you wanted to. And so by having an abundance of secret areas and having an abundance of paths and ways to get through the game, this added to replayability. This added to the sense of freedom that you were on this adventure and you were exploring this island and you were on this quest to save the princess, and you could tackle it in a variety of different ways. There wasn't just one way all the way through to beat the game. And this design philosophy is really, really clever, because it allows you to not have things like a difficulty picker on the game, right? It allows you to not have like an easy, normal, hard, or a normal, hard mode. You can really customize the game to the way you want to play. And a lot of people don't think about this when they think about Super Mario World, that they just think that these things are part of the game because that's the way it is. It's like, no, it's really a way to augment some of the challenges and the way the game is played, right? One of the examples of this is the dash boxes, the dotted line boxes in Super Mario World, right? There are different color ones. There are green ones, yellow ones, like pink, purple ones, blue ones. And you can find switches for these boxes hidden throughout the world. And what these boxes do a lot of the time is make alternate paths, make easier paths for you to get past obstacles, or lead you to secret exits to the levels to advance in a different way. this was Miyamoto's way of also not including a difficulty picker, but allowing the player to customize the gameplay to the way they wanted to play it. Something else too, this completely blew my mind because I played this game for 30 years. I played this, no, not 30 years, like 27, 28 years, because I played this game. It was the first video game I ever played when I was 3. I played this game for 28 years, and I did not know that on the world map, levels that have multiple exits glow red and regular levels just glow yellow. I had no idea. I didn't even notice this. And in my research doing, finding things out for this episode, I learned that, and it kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, like, are you kidding me? How could I play this game for 27 years and not know this? I kind of just remembered where all the secret exits were in the levels. I didn't really put that together, but I kind of want to go back and play this game now, knowing that, and just kind of look at that. Thanks to battery saves, the players could really take advantage of all these secrets, all these hidden areas, right? Because the game can now be saved. So you didn't have to sit through and play the game as fast as possible, because 2 to 3 hours to play a full game is a pretty long time. So you could save and you could explore and find the secrets at your leisure, which really opened up more freedom for the way you could play Mario. Another thing about the difficulty is there were so many hidden levels that had increased difficulty. For example, if you go to like the Star Road or find the secret levels, right? I think, those levels represent a jump in difficulty from the standard overworld levels. Like, they really do. So Miyamoto and his team cleverly put all these things in there so that not only could you play the game the way you wanted to, but you could vary your level of challenge. You could still complete and beat the game without playing some of these harder levels, but those secrets and those harder levels were there for incentivized challenge. So that way the game would still be approachable. The standard path through the game would still be approachable, but hardcore or experienced players could find these secrets and find these hidden areas and challenge themselves even further. And it created a depth to the game that you don't really think about when you think about old games. You just think that, oh yeah, that's the way they're designed and stuff like that. But that was very cleverly and very specifically done for those reasons. Yoshi, do you know where we're going? We've been walking around in this forest for like 6 hours, and we're going in circles. Yes, I followed your directions specifically.
Yahoo!
Yes, we went past the tree with the scary face on it.
Yahoo!
Yes, we passed the scary house with the ghosts. That was terrifying.
Yahoo!
Yes, the lake. We passed the lake. We're going in circles. We've seen all these things multiple times. How do we get out of this forest? I mean, this is Dinosaur Island. Isn't this your home? You should know how to get out of this forest. I can't be trapped here. We need to, like, the jump guy. He left us. He's gone. He obviously figured out a way out. Let's go.
Yahoo!
What do you mean the red? What do you mean the levels flash red when there are secret exits?
Yahoo!
No, I had no idea all this time that happened.
Wow!
All right, let's just go into this. Let's just go here and we're just gonna try all of the pipes until we find our way out of here. Come on, let's go. We gotta save your friends and get the princess. Come on.
Yahoo!
With Super Mario World came a variety of different enemies. Not only all the enemies were updated and their designs were kind of altered for this new game. Goombas look different. Koopa Troopas went from walking around on 4 legs to walking around on 2 legs. You could shoot them out of their shells. You could kick their shells back at them, stuff like that. And the shells, if you were riding a Yoshi, the shells, you could swallow them, and depending on which shell you swallowed, they would do different things. Red shells, you could breathe fire. Blue shells, you could fly if you swallowed one of them. So that was just another way that they altered the gameplay around Yoshi. They added new enemies like the Charging Chuck, one of my favorite Mario enemies, a football playing guy that takes 3 hits to kill. And he's honestly one of my most clear memories of this game growing up. I clearly remember when I first played this game, the very first night I played this game, I have early memory in the first world that I went to. So when you start, you start in I think it's Donut Country, right? Is the first world, something like that. And you can go either left or right. And I would go right and play that level. It's the level with all the red Koopa Troopas at the start. And I could not, as a little kid, get past the charging Chuck. It was very challenging. I remember dying several times to him over and over, and my parents jumping in and helping me to play and playing with me. Just a very, very, very cool, vivid memory of charging Chuck specifically. And maybe that cemented my love of football for the rest of my life because of that core memory. You got things like the Wiggler, Rick Van Fish, that sleepy ass fish that follows you if you get too close to it. Just, new things that had never been seen before. Going back to Yoshi, he drastically altered the way you could play the game with swallowing enemies, swallowing fruits to get power-ups, get one-ups. He could help you. You could sacrifice him if you wanted to save a jump and kick him into the pit. And one really cool thing regarding to the music, which we'll talk about in a second, let's talk about it here because I'm going to bring it up, right? So we're going to circle back to Yoshi, but the music in this game is very clever. One thing that Koji Kondo realized making Super Mario Bros. 3 is that he composed way too many pieces of music. Was kind of his thought process. He had so many different varieties of music in Super Mario Bros. 3 that he kind of wanted to simplify it for Super Mario World. So he built most of the level themes around this central theme, and I'll cycle through some of them right here. So very clever the way he did that and the way he kind of changed different themes depending on the level, or changed that theme depending on the level, is very, very cool. And for an added layer of depth, now we're circling back around to Yoshi. When you got on Yoshi, there was an additional percussion track that got laid over the top of it to kind of signify that you were riding Yoshi. So just really little details like that in the sound design and stuff with Yoshi that added to the atmosphere of the game. Also in the sound design too, since they could take advantage of more audio channels on the Super Nintendo, they added things in different levels to make it more atmospheric. Like, for example, in the cave in the underground levels, when Mario jumps or makes a noise or a sound effect or something, that noise echoes because he's in a cave. And you might think, well, yeah, duh, that's super easy. But at the time, that was really incredible. And with the extra added audio channels, they are able to do more things like this and make the game more atmospheric, and it just added to the overall atmosphere and charm of the game. The extra buttons were able to be utilized to do more things. I already mentioned that they had the L and the R shoulder buttons where you could scroll forward and backward to see where you just come from and what lay ahead in level to reduce the amount of leaps of faith you had to take. They added a spin jump because they had extra jumps for Mario, which, in my opinion, especially if you see some of the Super Mario Maker stuff that people do, the spin jump is one of the most iconic things that they added to Mario, I think, outside of the stuff he does in 3D. It's so unbelievably good. The extra buttons also allowed them to take advantage of a new item they called the Super Feather. They thought about bringing the raccoon tail and the super leaf over from Super Mario Bros. 3, but they originally settled on a new item called the Super Feather, which would give Mario a cape. And the cape worked differently, but similarly to the raccoon tail, and where you had to build up speed and you had to get in the air. But the thing is to stay in the air, you weren't mashing a button. You had to rock back and forth on the controller to kind of maintain your momentum flying through the stage. So it wasn't overly powerful to the point where you could just fly over everything. But if you could master it, you could skip portions of levels and choose to play like that. And there were even secret areas and stuff that took advantage of having this cape power. And there were vertical levels that took advantage of this flying cape power. So when you add all these things together and kind of look at Super Mario World from the standpoint of the time. And this is why I think it's important to view video games in the time that they were made for historical reasons. Super Mario World was an impressive game, and it had to be. Nintendo was betting everything that Mario would help it sell consoles against Sega and the Genesis and Sonic. And they needed it to be this perfect pack-in title, and they needed people to know that, hey, we're not messing around with the 16-bit era. Mario's coming. He's still Mario. And it really, really was very successful for Nintendo, which, by the way, they managed to cram this whole game on a 4 megabit cartridge, which you might laugh at now because we've got Call of Duty Warzone updates that are like 5 billion times the size of Super Mario World. But I digress. Super Mario World really embodies everything that Mario is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a family-friendly game that you can approach and pick up and just kind of learn through playing. There are no text boxes or dialogue boxes that tell you how to play, but the controls are so intuitive and what you're supposed to do is so intuitive that you just kind of learn it by playing, and you can pick it up pretty fast. But it's not so simple as to be a kiddie game. There's hidden depths and hidden layers to the challenges there, and it allows for more experienced players to have a more experienced challenge, aka the Star Road and the secret levels, and kind of different things like that. It really was the perfect launch title. You don't really get things like this anymore. I can't remember the last time that like a launch title defined a generation, basically, which is what Super Mario World did. I would think that maybe, you can make a case for some of the Xbox 360 stuff. I don't even know, but Super Mario World was a big deal, and to this day, you can find many game lists of the best games of all time that Super Mario World is at or near the top of, beating out even sometimes Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, Mario Bros. 3. This game at the time, was incredible, but as people look back on it, for people to say that Super Mario World is one of, if not the best game ever made, certainly the best platformer ever made for the Super Nintendo, and some people contend it's even the greatest Mario game ever made. Shigeru Miyamoto himself, who at times has lamented that he felt that Super Mario World was released unfinished, claims to this day that Super Mario World is his favorite Mario game on any given day. He will tell you that. So I don't think you can sleep on Super Mario World. I think it's an incredible title. It's something that had to be incredible to compete. It really defined Nintendo for that era, and it really showed, despite the fierce competition from Sega, is that Nintendo is still king, and Nintendo still knew what they were doing back then, and it ultimately worked out. To this day, Sega's just makes games now, and they publish games, and they work with Nintendo now. There's no bitter console rivalry anymore. So that's kind of the brief history. If you want to learn more about it, there's obviously reading you can do. There's a wonderful video on YouTube by the gaming historian of the history of Super Mario World. And you don't realize, honestly, that video should be retitled to The History of Super Mario World and the Super Nintendo, or the Super Famicom, because really those two things were inextricably linked, right? There were other games that came out for the launch of the Super Nintendo. There were a bunch of other publishers on board to make games, including the debut of F-Zero. But Super Mario World was really the embodiment of everything Nintendo stood for at the time. Not to mention crushing, grueling hours to get this game out the door. Things that would not be acceptable now and shouldn't be acceptable now. Miyamoto himself worked through the night some nights on this game. He wouldn't go home. He would not sleep. And that kind of thing is not sustainable. I suppose, you could say it was, and it is a labor of love for him, but nobody should be forced to work that much, which is why I constantly worry about the health of Masahiro Sakurai. He constantly looks tired and worn down, and that man needs a vacation. So that's just a little bit of the history of Super Mario World. You can learn a lot more about it. There are people, like I said, Gaming Historian does a great piece on it. There are other people that do way more in-depth dives in that area of video games and who know more about that area of video games than I do. And I hope that my lack of knowledge didn't misrepresent anything, but I thought it was important to put context to not only how I feel about this game, but to where this game stands amongst its peers as one of the best Mario games, if not the best, and considered one of the greatest games of all time on an aggregate list of all games ever made, not just from the era, but from an aggregate list of all games ever made. And it shows. It controls super tight. It's still super fun to play. There's just something about it that it is so good in the way it was designed, and that tradition for Mario has been maintained going forward into the future. I have a little bit of a bias towards Mario because I love him so much, because he got me into gaming. I would argue a lot of years, Mario 64, Galaxy 2, Odyssey, when a mainline Mario game comes out, it's a strong contender for a game of the year. I just think we take Mario for granted for how good he's been for so long. But whenever Nintendo puts out a Mario game, it's just a constant reminder of what they're really about and what their philosophy is regarding games. Sometimes they might get accused of being corporatized and stuff, but the soul of Mario has not changed, even though the times have. It's always about fun. It's always about super tight controls. It's always about being able to approach the game the way you want to. And I think that's more important of Mario's legacy than how many titles it's sold or how many games he has or this, that, and the other. I think that Mario's true legacy is he unlocked what gaming and game design is all about. And that's very, very important. Now, for me specifically, I have very, very strong memories associated with Super Mario World. It is one of the first games I ever got. I never actually had the Super Mario World cartridge. I got the Super Mario World plus Super Mario All-Stars cartridge that came packed in with the Super Nintendo in a bundle in like 1994. And I've told this story before. My dad used to work for a company that built in-store displays, and they did all like the video game displays where you could play them in the store. And so I think the way I acquired a Super Nintendo is they gave him one when they were kind of done producing those, and they had some left over in the stock. And so he was able to bring one home and introduce me to video games. And really from the start, I'm sure I played those other Mario games on the Super Mario All-Stars cartridge, but they knew that Mario World was the newest one, and that's the first one I ever played. I had memories of ever playing it. Like I said, I remember the night we first played it, and it's sitting up on top of like the dresser, like the small tube TV, like or CRTs or whatever they were called at the time. And I remember looking up at it and holding the controller down because the controller wire would hang down on the dresser because wired controllers were still a thing. And just looking up at it and just being mesmerized and transfixed and falling in love with it immediately. 3 years old, not even old enough to have formative thoughts and understand what it means to love something and understand what it means to have logical conclusions in my life. But I knew even back then that this was something I was going to love forever. And like I said, I have very vivid memories of that first night playing it and being stuck on the charging chuck and being just dying over and over to that enemy. To this day, it's something that I remember very clearly. And I know from then on, I was obsessed. It was something that I loved to do, and it's something that I wanted to do all the time as much as I could. Growing up in a more conservative household, at least back then, my parents did try to limit my video game time because back then there was obviously the scare that, video games are rotting kids' brains, making them suffer in school, stuff like that. So I was limited to like roughly maybe about an hour a day now that would be nothing because of the length of games. But back then you could make significant progress in an hour. I was limited to about an hour a day, except for on Saturdays, which was when my mom worked. She was a hairdresser, and she worked in the salon all day on Saturday because she took care of us during the week. And even though you only work one day in a salon, you could still make some good money if you had good clients that tipped well, and you know, she did. But anytime my dad was a little bit more hands off on parenting than my mom was, so he kind of let us have a little more freedoms, and he kind of let us do whatever we wanted on Saturday, with the caveat that the only thing we had to do on Saturday is we had to take a nap after lunch from like 12 to like 1 or 12 to whenever we woke up. That was the only rule, especially like when my sister was born. So that was the only rule because, you know, kids need naps. And I that rule persisted for a few years. I kind of get the feeling that it was because just so he could have a break from us, just have like an hour of quiet time to himself, which is kind of funny. But the trade-off was we got to really do whatever we wanted. And we came to call these Saturdays no rules Saturdays, was what they were referred to. And so my mom knew this, and so every time, you know, she's like, "Oh, overrule Saturday." And I have very clear memories of playing, especially Super Mario World, like literally starting in the morning and then taking my nap in the middle of the day, but playing Super Mario World. My dad just let me play all day, probably because I just sat there and played it and just shut up and didn't bother him. But a side tangent, let that be a note that playing video games all day as a youngster does not rot your brain. It does not turn you into a psychopath that wants to kill people. I am a prime example of that not happening. So, but it was no rule Saturdays. And once my sister was born and my mom kind of shifted away from doing hair stuff on Saturday and got into, she was a teacher's aide at the school that I went to. The private school that I attended for all my entire grade school, middle school, high school career, that school system. And so she wouldn't be working on Saturdays. And my dad always likes to laugh and tell the story. And he said, instead of being excited that my mom was going to be home on Saturdays, the first thing I asked was, does this mean that there are no rules Saturdays? And he thought that was hysterical. And my mom was like, well, we'll see. And Saturdays they were a bit more strict now that my mom was home. God bless her. But I did still get to play more on Saturday, and I did get to do things more on Saturday. And I was getting older too. So at this time, I was starting to get into like organized sports. I was starting to play the soccers on the weekend and have the games and the practices and all that stuff. So my video game time was down a little bit. But I still came back to Super Mario World, and I still came back to those are some of my earliest memories playing video games and just having no rules Saturday and stuff like that. I remember playing that game for years. Even when I had a PlayStation 1, I would still go back and play Super Mario World just because it was so good. Eventually, when we got the more advanced systems like the PlayStation and the N64, my Super Nintendo went to my grandparents' house, so that we went over to my grandparents' house a lot with the family, so that me and my cousins would have something to do while we were over there. And so the Super Nintendo was over there, and my uncle's NES was over there. And so that was really my introduction to NES games. I didn't really know what the NES was. I just knew the Super Nintendo, and I kind of knew that there was a Sega Genesis because my cousin had one, but we never played that. Then this is how you know that the Nintendo was the preferred console, right? In my cousin's house, the Super Nintendo was hooked up to the main TV, and the Sega Genesis was hooked up to like a side TV in a side room in like a storage area that like nobody ever went in. So that's how you can kind of tell what the preference was, right? Is that Nintendo got the main TV and Sega was relegated to the side room. But the Super Nintendo ended up at my grandparents' house, and it had us time to do stuff, you know, there while the adults were just sitting around talking, drinking, have a good time. The kids could go in the Nintendo room and play Nintendo, which is funny that that's another core memory that I have, that one of the rooms in our house eventually was dedicated to like playing games. And so it became known as the Nintendo room. So anytime they needed to find me, it's just like, oh, you just go, you know, Eric's in the Nintendo room. I don't even remember what we were talking about. My wife just called me. But so yeah, the Nintendo went over to my grandparents, and unfortunately, they, without consideration to ask me, they got rid of it in one of their like fire sale, garage sale things, and the NES. So a lot of my back catalog of classic retro games was lost. I wish they would have asked me, because I would have bought or I would have taken the Nintendo back from that Super Nintendo back from them, and I would have bought the NES off of them because my uncle had acquired, because he didn't want the NES games, but he had acquired like a library of like 30, 40 NES games. And I really, really, really regret not having those. That is very, very painful memory. But my gaming journey started with Mario, and to this day, I play Super Mario World at least once a year, and it's just as fun every single time. And I have, especially now getting older, and kind of the perspective of the passage of time is very relevant in my life, and just how quickly, I'm 31, and I just kind of, my 20s came to an end so suddenly that, it just reminds me of times when things were more carefree. So, in my opinion, Super Mario World, you can go back and play it today, and it's better made than a lot of games that come out today. There's so much love, there's so much care, there's so much thought put into the design of Super Mario World. It honestly deserves the title of one of the greatest games of all time. It may have not been received as favorably as Super Mario Brothers 3 was, but at the end of the day, I just think it does. It's got so much more heart, so much more character, and it launched Nintendo into the 16-bit era on a great, great note. And while Sega did have the leg up for the while, Nintendo eventually caught up, and it was due in part thanks to Super Mario World. It's a game I will always love until my dying day. I hope I'm always able to play it, because I don't know what more I can say about it. I don't know what more praise I can heap on it. I don't know how much more I can express my love of Super Mario World. This isn't like a critical breakdown of the game. It's more of an emotional memory side, and just a little bit of history of Super Mario World, and my history, my personal history with it. But it's so good. It introduced so many Nintendo staples, Yoshi being the most important, Yoshi being another iconic character in Nintendo's stable. Just the way that they moved from 8 separate worlds to kind of still having the worlds, but they were all interconnected on this ever-changing map that you could change and find secrets on. Yeah, it was so good. The way that they implemented that you could have an extra item in the stage with you. Like if you got a mushroom and got another mushroom, it would go up to the top, and you could, you could have one in reserve if you got hit. Was so good. The way that they implemented the booze, the way that they implemented the underground levels and all the secrets and the Koopalings and the castles, just everything about it, and Star World and the secret levels, and everything about it was just so great. The Forest of Illusion, to this day, is one of my most memorable and frustrating experiences ever. When I was a kid, I could not get out of the Forest of Illusion. I did not see the rest of Super Mario World as a kid because I couldn't figure it out. I didn't know which level the pipe was in. I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't figure it out. And it didn't occur to my brain to just try all of the pipes to get the secret exit to get out of the Forest of Illusion. So yeah, it's really great. And I highly recommend going to play it. It's consistently on my personal list of the best games of all time. It's means very much to me personally. Not that even if my first game I played wasn't as great as Super Mario World was, what an introduction to video gaming, right? What a way to start with just, and to me, like I said today, this is everything that video games are meant to be. It's embodied in Super Mario World. So if you have the time, if you have the chance, if you don't have experience playing older Mario games, Super Mario World still holds up today. It's still better made, I would argue, than a lot of things. And you can say whatever you want. You can say that old games aren't as good. This is one of my shining examples that I will say, hey, this old game is better than a lot of the new games, and I will fight for that for sure. It's very well made. So yeah, that's a little bit of my memories, my personal experience with Super Mario World. My first step in this journey, a long journey, to reflect on some of the games that meant the most to me. And we'll be having some of these episodes interspersed throughout guest episodes, throughout guiding keys, and things like that. I'm very much looking forward to continuing this adventure. And based on these little skits that I've been doing, you'll just have to wait and see what game and where in what world I end up next. I hope you guys like the skits. I had a lot of fun doing it with Keith, and I had a lot of fun brainstorming, coming up with the ideas. I have a lot of good ideas for future skits, for future games, a lot of funny things. It kind of a comedic representation of my journey through these video games. I'm also playing these games too before I do the episode, so they're fresh in my mind. I'm not just looking up random facts. I'm not just watching videos on the internet. I played Super Mario World for this episode, and I'll be playing the next game for that episode, which I'm not ready to reveal yet because I actually haven't decided which game I want it to be on yet. So, but yeah, I thank you so much. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to the episode so much. I really, really appreciate it. And one of the main things I wanted to do with the Unlockables was share my memories of video games and my passions of video games with people. And this is one of the ways that I wanted to do so. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. If you have it in your heart, if you have time to stop by whatever podcatcher you're on, if they have a rating and review system, if you could leave a rating and review, that'd be fantastic. 5 stars is preferable, but give me whatever you think I deserve. I'll appreciate it either way. It helps more people find the show. It helps us, me find new people and learn about their video game memories, which is one of the things that I love doing and one of the things that I want to do. And I want to talk to you if you're listening. I want to talk to you about what it is you do and what the games that you play and the game that you love. So yeah, if you leave a review, a rating, subscribe, all that stuff, it really helps the show. You can find me on the internet on all these socials. The socials are linked in the description below. Twitter, Instagram. I don't have a Discord, but I'm in enough of our friends' Discords where our podcast circle is that you can probably interact with me there. Twitter is my main way of pretty much interacting with people because Discord gives me anxiety. I see all the white dots from the conversations that I miss, and I'm just like, no, I can't do this. It's not possible. And I think that about wraps it up. Shout out as always to Hyper Potions for the incredible song at the start, Time Trials Plus from Sonic Mania, allowing me to use that. Great guys, go check out. They're also linked in the description. The video and their channel, I believe, are both linked. Go support those guys, and go support all the people that I shout out on Twitter or Instagram. Any show that I listen to, and I listen to quite a lot of them over the course of a week, most of them indie shows. Any show that I listen to, I shout out. So if you see me shouting out a show, especially multiple weeks in a row, it's got my seal of approval. It's something that I'm telling you, hey, you should go and listen to this because it's definitely worth your time. So go check out all my friends and all the stuff that they do. Anybody that's been on the show before is somebody whose show I listen to or content I consume. And they definitely have my seal of approval for the things that they're doing. They do way better stuff than I could ever hope to do and very cool things. So go check them out. And as always, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in. And most importantly, make sure you take care of yourselves. Holy shit. Yoshi, did you?
Wow!
Yeah, I saw it too.
Yahoo!
Yeah, he killed the big king lizard guy flying around in his clown car up there.
Yahoo!
Yeah, no,
Yahoo!
that wasn't even the most impressive thing. He somehow turned a castle into a rocket and like launched it into that hill over there.
Wow!
And then he single-handedly took a hammer and demolished that other castle.
Yahoo!
Like, who is this guy? Well, it looks to me, based on the following that we picked up, that we've accomplished our task and saved all your friends. And the mustachioed man has obviously saved the princess.
Yahoo!
And I gotta say, despite the fact that we were lost in that forest for hours, that, you know, and despite being who knows where, how far from my home, this was a great adventure. It was a lot of fun.
Yahoo!
And I think these memories will stick with me probably forever.
Wow!
Look, a pipe appeared. It's the same one. It's the same color that Keith sent me down, like this weird, like corporeal blue.
Yahoo!
I think I'm starting to get it now. And I think it's time for me to move on to wherever this pipe takes me next.
Yahoo!
Thank you, Yoshis. I will always remember this time, and if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to call. But I will not go hiking with you in the forests ever again.